The New York Jets are doing everything in their power to build a championship level team. They have signed Tyron Smith. They brought in Mike Williams. They got Tyrod Taylor off the streets to serve as a veteran backup for Aaron Rodgers. Things are looking slightly up for New York. But you gotta ask yourself, will all these moves matter, or will it just wind up with the Jets being the Jets? And the answer to that question is a pretty simple yes. No matter what the Jets do in free agency, they are still shackled with Aaron Rodgers, who was a fine quarterback 3 or 4 years ago, but his last season as a full starter was the worst of his career. Then he tore his Achilles in his first game as a Jet, and now he's another year older, coming off one of the worst injuries an athlete can suffer, and, let's be frank, is somewhat of a distraction. The fact he did not immediately come out and dismiss the notion that he was going to be RFK's VP candidate says all you need to know. For someone who went out and deliberately put on tape that, everything besides football needs to be driven out of this building towards the end of last season, he really seems to be focusing on things other than football. He's too big of a distraction, the quality of play isn't there yet, and while the Jets may have a functional offense to go with their elite defense, I just don't think it's going to matter. They're in the AFC. They're in the best conference in football. They aren't getting past Mahomes. They aren't getting past Baltimore. They're probably not going to even get past the Bills for their own division. None of these moves matter in the grand scheme of things, and while they help in the short term, signing injury-prone vets does nothing come playoff time.
Every move they've made, they are crossing their fingers that they work out and they're able to stay healthy. There's a reason they're able to acquire Tyron Smith. There's a reason they're able to acquire Mike Williams on the contracts that they got them for. Mike Williams, 1 year, $15 million. Tyron Smith, I don't remember the exact number.
I believe it was $20 million.
Yeah, 1 year, $20 million. But the reason they were even able to acquire them on 1 year deals that they won't have to worry about in the future is because they've been injury prone and they're veterans. Mike Williams tore his ACL last year, isn't coming off a healthy season like Keenan Allen, where a team would have been willing to trade for him and have that type of contract on their books or even look for a long-term extension. And you're playing on the notorious MetLife turf, even with Aaron Rodgers.
Didn't they just tear up the MetLife turf last year?
I believe they tore it up before last. I think they've changed it a few times. I'm not 100% sure on that.
First ground one way or the other.
And regardless from even that, we're counting on veteran players that need to contribute in order for this team to be successful that have been injury prone. You're relying on an old quarterback coming off an Achilles injury, a wide receiver who happens to be one of my favorite wide receivers to watch with some of the highlight reel catches Mike Williams is capable of. And you have Tyron Smith, who's been injured season in and season out the past few years. You have to rely on those guys to stay healthy for the entirety of the season and compete with the teams Isaiah just named, like the Chiefs, Ravens. Will they be able to beat someone like the Bills? The Bengals will have Joe Burrow back. The entire AFC North will be good, or at least better than the Jets, in my opinion. So I think it would be very lucky for the Jets to be, or I don't see them being an elite contender in the AFC. Maybe if everything goes perfectly, they win 10 games and get in as a wild card.
I mean, best case scenario for them, one, the Bills and Miami both got rated in free agency. They're probably going to be worse next year. Let's say that happens. Let's say the Jets stay healthy, put together a functional offense. Rodgers looks like his last healthy season in Green Bay when he was 3 years younger. Let's say all that goes right. I think they win their division if that happens. Maybe win 11, 12 games because they get to play the Patriots and 2 weak AFC East teams twice, similar to how the Patriots were making the playoffs during the Brady years. But still, they just get throttled by one of the top dogs in the AFC. We've seen how Rodgers performs in the playoffs against good defenses. We've seen how he performs in the NFC Championship game time and time again. Do you really think he has the intestinal fortitude to go head-to-head with Patrick Mahomes facing an elite defense in one of those games? It's just not going to happen. I get the moves. They're win-now moves. They have to go win now because of the contract Rodgers is on, and he's any given moment could probably retire, but it still doesn't move the needle for me. And since you mentioned the AFC North, I don't think they're entirely going to be good. I think Joe Burrow has 2 terrible tackles in front of him. Trent Brown is not a good signing. That is not going to give them the protection. We're going to be dealing with the same injury issues for the Bengals we were last season. They lost DJ Reader. They're losing one of their wide receivers in all likelihood, in T. Higgins. They're not going to be that good. The Steelers are the definition of mediocrity. The Browns, Deshaun Watson at quarterback, need I say more? Best case scenario, they somehow get Joe Flacco back in the building. I don't think the AFC North is going to be all that good. The biggest reason, though, The team I think is going to improve the least and may for the first time have a losing season under their head coach is the Pittsburgh Steelers, because they now have Russell Wilson and Justin Fields as their two quarterbacks. And while I think it's certainly a good move to move off Kenny Pickett, I don't think he was the answer in Pittsburgh. There's not much of an upgrade, if any. And paired with getting rid of Deontay Johnson, I don't see that offense being all that much better, unless they just get an offensive genius to be their coordinator, pull one out of thin air, which I am skeptical about given the location they're playing. But Russell
You're not
Wilson,
an Arthur Smith believer? You know, Steelers fans, they completely ignore everything that just happened with the Falcons. Say, oh, he was a top 5 coordinator when he was with the Titans, and he had Derrick Henry to rely on.
There's a difference between being a coach and being a coordinator. I kind of get what they're saying with that one. I still don't think it's going to work out for Arthur Smith, but that is a somewhat valid reason they have there.
Now, I think it's a little bit of a cope.
A little bit of a cope. You'd know something about that as a Giants fan.
Okay, there.
But what do you think about the quarterback situation, Tristan?
I don't really understand the move for the two quarterbacks that they wound up getting, because you signed Russell Wilson to the vet minimum, who's athletically past his prime. He's nowhere near the same type of scrambling quarterback that we've seen him be in the past. Now, maybe they can kind of rebuild the offense, rely much more on the run with Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, and build the offense around that. And then Russell Wilson's, whatever he's got left in his ability to extend the play and then chuck the ball down the field to George Pickens or get the ball and use Pat Freiermuth more this season. I don't really see that. Russ is definitely better than what we saw from Kenny Pickett last season. I think the Steelers fans that are propping him up as, oh, he was top 5 in this stat last season. He was so efficient.
Every quarterback's top 5 in something or other.
It's a no. We use the word cope. It's another cope from Steelers fans to make Russ out to be better than he actually is. Because if you watched Broncos games last year, you completely understand why Sean Payton, why the organization was willing to take an $85 million dead cap to have him not play for their team.
To be fair, if we're going to talk about the Broncos, I'll jump in with the fact Russell Wilson is not the Sean Payton quarterback. Sean Payton wants a quarterback who can go audible to play at the line of scrimmage, can go off script before the ball snapped, and Russell Wilson, even in his prime with his many talents, was not that. That was just a terrible pairing. And I think we knew there was going to be a separation at some point. I think some of us may be a bit surprised it was this early, but that is equally on Sean Payton as it was on Russ. I'm not willing to just heap off his failures in Denver on Sean.
There's always blame to go around in general, but I think regardless, we've clearly seen a decline from Russ, and I think anyone who kind of ignores that and is still seeing some glimmer of hope that he can be a, let's say, top 12 quarterback is a little bit delusional. I think best case scenario, he's hovering right at that 15 to 20 mark as far as like starting quarterback in the NFL.
Now, if he hits that 15 to 20 mark, I kind of agree with you. That's his best case scenario. That is still like noticeably better than Kenny Pickett.
It is. And they'll win games and they always go above 500. And the reason the Justin Fields move was kind of weird to me is you signed Russ to this vet minimum who's looking to win games and he's getting paid by the Broncos right now. And then you go out and get a quarterback who's on the last year of his rookie deal and you have to decide whether or not you're going to pick up his 5th-year option.
They're not going to.
And he's going to be a backup all season long. So that's the reason I found the Justin Fields move weird and that they're not going to let him compete for the starting job at all, given they're both essentially on 1-year contracts and you need to make a decision is if you're going to move forward with either of them for, let's just say, another 2 seasons after this or 1 more season after this.
Yeah, well, that's not some complicated decision. It's that Justin Fields was one of the 5 worst passers of the football in the league last year. Like, this isn't some great mystery. The Steelers aren't buying into this future project who didn't quite work out somewhere. It's not like they're the ones who went out and traded for Kenny Pickett after 2 seasons. Justin Fields is a known commodity. There's a reason he is worth a 6th-round draft pick instead of a day 2 pick or even a day 1 pick. He's not good at football. He is brought in here because he can do a similar type of thing as Russ and run around a little bit. It's a different style. He doesn't really extend plays. He just runs on the ground for rushing yards. He doesn't do anything behind the line of scrimmage, but it's somewhat similar in that way. So they also didn't have a quarterback to back up Russ. They traded away Mason Rudolph, or they didn't re-sign Mason Rudolph. They traded away Kenny Pickett. It was just Russ in that room. Why not spend a 6th-round pick on a somewhat similar archetype?
So what do you have to say to the Steelers fans and the Bears Justin Fields cult brigade that will say, oh, the only reason he went for a 6th-round pick is because that is where he wanted to go, and the Bears did him a favor when there are other teams looking to trade from that might have given up slightly
a 5th
more.
round pick. You were never going to get a day 2 pick for Justin Fields. It's simple as that. I mean, did you not witness the last 3 seasons of injury-prone football, of mediocre at best accuracy, of arm talent, which either saw him drastically overthrowing his receivers deep or not being able to hit a crossing route? We live in a strange world that Justin Fields still has as many diehard fans as he does. And I think it's mostly either Steelers fans coping with the fact that he may be their quarterback one day, or it's Bears fans who don't know what a good quarterback looks like because, again, they have never seen a good quarterback in their franchise history. You could argue Jay Cutler was the best passer of the football for the Chicago Bears organization. Do you know how bad of an indictment that is of your city, of your team, of your offensive coordinators throughout the years? If not for the 1985 Bears defense and Walter Payton, the Bears would be the worst franchise in all of football, and it starts with that quarterback position. It's just woeful.
That was a little bit hard.
Why was it hard? It's a very accurate assessment. The Bears fans who think he's a good quarterback don't know what a good quarterback is. The only time they get to see a good quarterback is when Aaron Rodgers came and collected rent twice a year against him.
As a Giant, I know I've said this a few times, but as a Giants fan, it's the exact same thing that's happened with the Daniel Jones cult. The only difference is, and the reason they're moving off of him, is that they were able and lucked into, to a certain extent, have the first overall pick after 3 seasons of getting to evaluate him, and a very high, whether it would have been Caleb Williams or Drake May, 2 very good prospects that are clearly worth moving off Fields for. Either one of them fell into the lap. It's going to be Caleb Williams.
Well, to be frank, Tristan, the Giants can move off Daniel Jones with Bo Nix or Michael Penix and still be. They could move off Daniel Jones with Spencer Rattler at the 6th overall pick and still be the correct move. Granted, they're stuck with his contract for 1 more year, but
no, it's way. I don't want to get on a Daniel Jones rant, but it's way more nuanced.
Talking about Daniel Jones, don't lie.
It's way more nuanced than that because they never had. After the first few seasons, obviously you want to try and build around the quarterback you picked 6th overall. The only true, they missed out on Justin Herbert. That was the year immediately after his rookie season where he looked like there might be some promise, and they picked Andrew Thomas to help out the offensive line. You don't need to jump in quite yet.
The year after his rookie season, it looked like he might have some promise. He had 50 turnovers, or 90% of them being
He did throw
fumbles.
26 touchdowns.
Who cares? He peaked early and also fumbled the ball excessively.
All I'm saying is you can see why that happened. And Justin Herbert, as good as he is now, there were a lot of doubts about him as a prospect coming out of college.
Yeah, because he went to Oregon. Because Drake May went to UNC. Because C.J. Stroud went to Ohio State. This is the holy trinity. We are going to witness the holy trinity of quarterbacks going later than they should because they went to a certain school. And I've been guilty of it in the past. I will still never rate an Ohio State quarterback very high. But after we get popped in the mouth by Justin Herbert, C.J. Stroud, and we're about to get popped in the mouth by Drake May, I think we can all accept that narrative has died. The only reason there was questions about Herbert is because of his choice in college and the fancy jerseys he got to wear.
So you're saying Bo Nix is the next great NFL quarterback?
I am saying supremely talented players can go to any school, and we should probably stop scouting them based off the color of their underpants. Instead, we should
coordinate their underpants?
Instead, we should scout them based off the color of their fingernails.
Okay.
Anyway, those were our thoughts on the New York Jets situation and, of course, the lovely quarterback room of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Steelers Nation, let's drill, or whatever the expression Russ is going to use. Maybe Steelers Nation, let's weld. Let us know what you think down in the comments below. Tell us why we are woefully incorrect. If you're still here, like, share, subscribe. Your support is greatly appreciated. We'll see you next week.